The first time I knocked on a door in Hartsfield, Vermont, after 8:17 p.m., I heard breathing on the other side. Not muffled, not distant. Pressed right against the wood, mouth level, like whoever was standing there had walked up to the door the second I knocked and just stopped. I said the name on the delivery order. I said it twice. The breathing didn't change, didn't speed up, didn't catch. It just stayed there. Wet, even. Patient. An inch from my knuckles. I left the bags on the porch and walked back to my van, and I did not look at the windows. That was November. I'm going to tell you what I know now, in April, and I need you to understand something before I start. I am not the kind of person who tells stories like this. I'm not on Reddit at 2 a.m. reading about skinwalkers. I don't watch these videos, or I didn't before. I'm a 36-year-old guy with a commercial driver's license and a daughter in 2nd grade and an ex-wife in Keene, New Hampshire, who I send $1,400 a month to, and I took this job because it was the only route that paid a flat weekly rate instead of per delivery. That matters. The money matters. I need you to hold that in your head through everything I'm about to say, because every time I describe something that should have made me quit, the answer to "why didn't you leave" is, Nora needs braces and I was 2 months behind on support. My name is Greg Parson. I drive for Green Mountain Provisions, which is a regional grocery delivery company based out of Brattleboro. They service about 40 small towns across southern and central Vermont. The kind of places that lost their only grocery store sometime between 2008 and 2020 and now survive on a combination of Dollar General, gas station snacks, and companies like ours. You order online or by phone, we shop it at our warehouse, and drivers run routes 3 days a week. Most routes are tight loops. 20, 30 miles, a dozen stops. Easy work if you don't mind the roads in mud season. The Hartsfield route was different. I knew that going in, sort of. Hartsfield is up in Addison County, on the western slope of the Green Mountains, about 90 minutes from the warehouse. The town sits in a valley between two ridges that run almost perfectly north-south, which means it loses direct sunlight early. In winter, the sun drops behind the western ridge around 3:30, and by 4:15 the whole valley is in shadow. It's not dark yet, technically, but the quality of light changes. Everything goes flat, colorless, like someone adjusted the contrast on reality and forgot to turn it back. The town itself is maybe 400 people, which is generous. One paved road in, one paved road out. Route 73 comes through from the east, turns into Main Street for about a quarter mile, then winds west toward Lake Champlain. There's a post office, a volunteer fire station, a white congregational church built in 1804, and a building that says General Store on a sign so faded you can only read it in certain light. The store has been closed since 2019. There's a school that consolidated with Brandon in 2016. There's a cemetery on a hill. It's a beautiful place. I want to be clear about that. The valley is genuinely stunning, the kind of Vermont that ends up on calendars and syrup bottles. And the houses are old and proud, these tight white capes and federals with green shutters and stone foundations that have been there since before the Civil War. You can feel the weight of continuous habitation. Families that have been in the same house for 6 or 7 generations. That's not an exaggeration. One of my regular customers, Mrs. Aldrich, has mail that says Aldrich on the box, and the date carved into her lintel stone is 1791. Green Mountain Provisions had serviced Hartsfield for about 4 years before I took the route. The previous driver was a guy named Dennis Meacham, who had been doing it since the beginning and who quit in September with no notice. My dispatcher, Carla, told me this in the tone of voice people use when they're pretending something isn't a big deal. Dennis had some personal stuff going on, she said. You know how it is. I didn't push it. I needed the route. The Hartsfield run was every Wednesday, 40 to 50 orders, which was high for a town that size. Nearly every household. I'd load the van by noon, drive up and start delivering around 2:30. Carla told me the route usually took 4 to 5 hours, which meant I'd be finishing up around 7:30. Try to be done by 8, she said, and then paused, and then added in this very specific way. Actually, you need to be done by 8:17. I laughed. She didn't. I know it's an odd number, she said. It's in the service agreement with the town. They have a noise ordinance. No deliveries after 8:17. You knock on a door after that, it's a breach of contract, and they can pull our access. I told her I'd never heard of a noise ordinance with a time that specific. She said Vermont towns are like that. They set their own rules. It's a select board thing. Don't worry about it. Just be done by 8:17. She handed me a laminated card. I still have it. It's in the glove box of my van right now, and the edges are soft from how many times I've held it. One side has the Hartsfield delivery route in order. 46 addresses, starting from the east end of Main Street and working west and then up the hill roads. The other side has a list of instructions, not company policy. These were specific to Hartsfield. Here's what the card says. I'm reading it exactly as printed. Hartsfield Route driver protocols. Begin deliveries at the eastern end of Main Street and proceed west. Do not deviate from the listed order. All deliveries must be completed by 8:17 p.m. If you have remaining orders at 8:10, leave them on the porches without knocking. Do not wait for confirmation. If a customer opens the door before you knock, hand them the bags and say, Green Mountain Provisions. Do not enter the house. Do not accept invitations to come inside, regardless of weather. Between 7 p.m. and 8:17 p.m., you will notice that some houses have a light on in the upstairs window. Deliver to these houses normally. If the upstairs light is off and the downstairs lights are also off, leave the bags on the porch and do not knock. Between 7 p.m. and 8:17 p.m., if a customer meets you on the porch or in the yard rather than at the door, complete the delivery but do not turn your back to the house until you are past the property line. If you hear your name spoken from inside a house you have not yet approached, skip that house. Deliver those bags last, after all other deliveries are complete. You may see other vehicles on Main Street after sundown. If a vehicle is parked with its headlights on facing your direction of travel, do not pass it. Wait until it moves or turns off its lights. Do not drive above 15 miles per hour within town limits after 7:45 p.m. If you are still within town limits at 8:17 p.m., drive directly to Route 73 without stopping. Do not pull over. Do not check your mirrors more than necessary. After completing the route, stop at the Willard gas station on Route 73 East, 11 miles from town center, and call dispatch to confirm completion. Do not call from within Hartsfield. I read this in the warehouse parking lot, and then I went back inside and asked Carla if this was a joke. She said no. I asked if Dennis had written it. She said the protocols came from the town's select board as part of the service agreement, and Dennis had added some clarifications based on experience. I asked which ones Dennis added. She said she didn't know. I asked if anyone had ever had a problem on the route. She said no, as long as the protocols were followed. Greg, she said, and she put her hand on my arm, which she had never done before. It's good money. It's a flat rate. You do the route, you follow the card, you come home. That's it. I almost asked what happens if you don't follow the card, but I could tell from the way she was standing. Shoulders in, arms close, like she was bracing against a wind I couldn't feel, that the answer to that question was either I don't know or I can't tell you, and neither would help me. So on the first Wednesday in November, I loaded 46 orders into my van and drove to Hartsfield. The first trip was fine, better than fine. The roads were clear, the foliage was past peak, but the bare branches had their own kind of beauty. and the valley opened up below me like a painting as I came over the eastern ridge. I started at 2:40. The early deliveries were easy. Friendly people, normal interactions. A guy named Tom Breck helped me carry his bags in and offered me coffee. Mrs. Aldridge was waiting on her porch with a plate of cookies and told me I looked too thin. A younger couple with a baby waved from their kitchen window. Normal small-town stuff. I felt good. I felt like I'd been paranoid for no reason. By 5:30, I was about halfway through the list, working up Quarry Hill Road, and the light was gone. Not fading. Gone. The shadow from the western ridge came down like a curtain, and within maybe 10 minutes, the entire valley was in this heavy, grainy twilight. I turned on my headlights. The houses up here were more spread out, longer driveways, older trees pressing in close to the road. I noticed that some of the houses had already turned on their upstairs lights, even though it was only 5:30, and the card said the light thing didn't matter until 7. I made a note of it. I didn't think about it again until later. By 7:15, I had 9 deliveries left, and I was working the last stretch of addresses on the western edge of town, where the road starts climbing toward the ridge. These were the most isolated houses. Some of them were set back 200-300 feet from the road, up gravel drives that my van fishtailed on. The trees were thick here. Old sugar maples and red oaks, their bare branches lacing together overhead like fingers intertwined. I was watching the upstairs windows now. The card said to check. Almost every house had its upstairs light on, little squares of warm yellow above the dark facades, like signal fires. The downstairs windows were mostly dark, or had the bluish flicker of televisions, and the overall effect was strange. These houses lit from the top, glowing at the crown, dark at the base, like the houses were wearing halos. At 7:40, I had 3 deliveries left. I was making good time. I pulled up to the next address, 14 Ridgeline Road, order for someone named Pratt, and I noticed the upstairs light was off. All the lights were off. The house was completely dark, a black shape against the slightly less black sky. I checked the card. Rule 4. If the upstairs light is off and the downstairs lights are also off, leave the bags on the porch and do not knock. Fine. I grabbed the bags, walked up the porch steps, set them down by the door, and turned to leave. And as I stepped off the porch, I heard something from inside the house. Not breathing this time. A chair. The sound of a wooden chair being pushed back from a table. The scrape of it across a floor. Then footsteps. Slow. Moving toward the front of the house. I was at my van before the footsteps reached the door. I didn't hear the door open. I don't know if it did. I drove to the next house with my hands tight on the wheel, and I delivered the last 2 orders. Both had upstairs lights on. Both answered their doors normally. And I was back on Route 73 by 8:02, 15 minutes ahead of the deadline. At the Willard station, I called Carla. She asked if everything went smoothly. I said yes. She said good. She'd see me next Wednesday. I hung up and sat in my van in the gas station parking lot for 20 minutes, watching the road back toward Hartsfield, which was just a dark gap between the hills where no lights showed at all. The second week was similar. Normal daylight deliveries, increasingly quiet evening ones, upstairs lights on. The card's rules followed without incident. I finished by 7:50, no problems. The third week, same. I was starting to relax. The card was just a set of quirky protocols for a quirky town, I told myself. Vermont is full of towns like this. Insular, traditional, set in their ways. The noise ordinance was probably real. The upstairs lights were probably some local custom I didn't understand, like a porch light meaning, I'm home. The thing about not turning your back to the house was probably liability related, some old Yankee superstition that got codified into a contract. I could rationalize every line on the card. The fourth Wednesday is when that stopped being possible. It was the week before Thanksgiving, and the orders were heavy. Holiday supplies, extra flour, butter, canned pumpkin, the works. I had 51 orders instead of the usual 46, and some of them were double bags. I started late because of loading time, didn't reach Hartsfield until 3:15, and by 6 I knew I was behind. The daylight deliveries had taken longer because people wanted to chat. Tom Breck insisted I try his venison jerky. Mrs. Aldrich asked about my daughter and showed me a scarf she'd knitted for her, which I couldn't refuse, and which cost me 10 minutes of polite conversation. By 7:30, I had 12 deliveries left. By 7:45, 9, I was rushing now, barely stopping the van before jumping out with bags. At 8 o'clock, I had 4 left, all on the far western edge, all up those long, dark driveways. I checked the time. 17 minutes. I delivered the first one fast. Upstairs, light on. Woman answered the door, normal. 8:04. Drove to the next one. Upstairs, light on, no answer at the knock. Left the bags. 8:08. 2 left. The next house was at the end of a gravel road that branched off Ridgeline, and it took me 3 minutes just to drive in. I could feel the clock like a hand on my chest. 8:11. I grabbed the bags, jogged to the porch, knocked twice, no answer, left them, jogged back. 8:14. 1 delivery left, the last address on the card, 22 Ridgeline Road. I'd never delivered there before. It was a new order, added that week. The driveway was long and unlit, climbing at a grade that made my van strain in second gear. The trees were so close that branches scraped both sides. I came around a bend and the house appeared in my headlights. It was the oldest house I'd seen in Hartsfield. Not colonial, not federal. Older in a way I couldn't place. The proportions were wrong. The roofline was too steep, the windows too narrow and too tall, and the whole structure seemed to lean slightly forward, like it was looking down at me. There was no upstairs light. There were no lights at all. The house was dark. I checked the time. 8:16. Rule 4 said leave the bags on the porch and don't knock. Rule 2 said if it's past 8:10, leave them without knocking. Both rules agreed. I should have just thrown the bags on the porch and run. But the driveway was so long that even if I dropped the bags right now, I wasn't getting out of town by 8:17. I was already past the deadline, functionally. I'd be driving through Hartsfield at 8:20, 8:25, however long it took to get back to Route 73. Rule 9 said drive directly out without stopping. Fine, I could do that. I grabbed the bags. I walked to the porch. I set them down. And from inside the house, clearly, in a voice I recognized, "Greg, is that you?" It was Tom Breck's voice. Tom Breck, whose house was 2 miles east and downhill, whose delivery I'd completed at 6:45 that evening, who had waved to me from his kitchen while his dog barked. Tom Breck's voice coming from inside a dark house on the far western edge of town at 8:17 p.m. I looked at my phone. 8:17 exactly. "Greg, come in a second. I need help with something." I did not answer. I walked back to the van. I did not run because some part of my brain, some old lizard part, understood that running would change the dynamic. I walked at a steady pace, and I got in the van and I put it in reverse, and I backed down that driveway with my mirrors, and I did check them more than necessary. And I didn't care what Rule 9 said about that because I was not going to take my eyes off that house. Nothing followed me. Nothing appeared on the porch. But as I reached the bottom of the driveway and swung onto Ridgeline Road, my headlights swept across the front of the house one last time, and every window was lit. Not warm light, not lamplight, a flat white luminance like a fluorescent tube, and it was in every window simultaneously, upstairs, downstairs, the little half-moon window in the attic gable. All of it, as if the house had been full of light the entire time, and something had just decided to stop hiding it. I drove out of Hartsfield at 40 miles an hour. I don't know if anyone saw me. I didn't see anyone. The town was perfectly still. Every house I passed had its upstairs light on and its downstairs dark and its doors closed, and not a single person was visible anywhere. No cars, no dog walkers, no porch smokers, nothing. It looked like a town-shaped object with nobody inside it. At the Willard station, I called Carla, and for the first time, I didn't say everything went smoothly. I told her what happened. The voice, the lights, the time. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Did you go inside?" "No," I said. "Did you answer it?" "No." "Did you say anyone's name? Yours, the customer's, anyone's?" "No." Another silence. "Okay," she said. "You're fine. But Greg, the 817 thing isn't a noise ordinance. You understand that now, right?" I told her I did. "Dennis figured it out over 2 years," she said. "You figured it out in 4 weeks. I don't know if that's better or worse." She paused. "I'm going to give you a phone number. It belongs to a woman in Hartsfield named Eileen Calder. She's the one who negotiated our service agreement. If you want to keep doing this route, and I need you to keep doing this route, call her before next Wednesday. She'll tell you what Dennis never let me tell you because he said drivers should hear it from inside the town." She gave me the number. I saved it. I drove back to Brattleboro in silence, and I sat in my apartment, and I ate leftover pasta, and I watched my hands shake over the bowl, and I thought about the money, and I thought about Nora, and I thought about the sound of Tom Breck's voice coming from a house where Tom Breck was not. I called Eileen Calder on Friday morning. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been expecting me. Her voice was old but precise. The kind of Vermont voice that sounds like it's been cured in wood smoke and cold air, every consonant sharp, no wasted words. "You're Greg," she said, "the new driver." I told her yes. She asked me to come to Hartsfield on Saturday during the day, and to come to her house for coffee, and to bring the laminated card. I said I would. I drove up on Saturday morning. The valley was different in full daylight. Bright, sharp, almost aggressively normal. Smoke coming from chimneys. A dog trotting down Main Street. The Congregational Church looking postcard perfect against the blue sky. I found Eileen's house on the south end of Maine, a small federal with black shutters and a front garden put to bed for winter. She met me at the door. She was maybe 75, tall, thin, with white hair pulled back and eyes the color of creek water. Gray-green, clear, watching. She sat me at her kitchen table and poured coffee and placed the laminated card between us and said, "Ask." I asked what happens at 817. She picked up the card and turned it over in her hands. This time of year, with where the sun sets relative to the western ridge, 817 is approximately the minute when the last residual light in the upper atmosphere is no longer visible from the valley floor. It's not a fixed clock time. It changes through the year. We update the card every equinox. In June, it's closer to 9:40. In December, it's 7:50. The time on your card is calculated for the current period. I asked what happens when the last light goes. "The town becomes fully available," she said. I didn't understand. She could see that. "To them," she added. She told me the history. I'm going to give it to you the way she gave it to me, which was plainly, without drama, like she was reading from a town record because in some sense she was. Hartsfield was settled in 1784 by a group of families from Connecticut who bought the land through a grant. The valley was thickly forested and the soil was poor and the winters were severe, and the first decade of settlement was brutal. Several families left. The ones who stayed became very close. They had to be. They shared labor, shared food, shared warmth. By 1800, there were about 20 households, and the town had its church and its burying ground and its routines. In the winter of 1816, which Eileen called 1800 and froze to death, and which I later learned was a real thing, a volcanic winter caused by an eruption in Indonesia that dropped temperatures worldwide. Hartsfield was cut off. The snow started in late September and didn't stop. By November, the passes were closed. By January, the town was under 9 feet of snow and the temperature hadn't been above 0 in 40 days. People were starving, livestock was dead, the wood was running out. And then in February, the lights appeared. Eileen was careful here. She said the town records from 1816 describe luminous presences that were first observed in the upper windows of empty houses whose families had died or fled. The lights were white, steady, cold, and they appeared only after full dark. At first, people assumed it was some atmospheric phenomenon. St. Elmo's fire, swamp gas, something explicable. But the lights moved. They went from window to window. They appeared in houses that had been boarded shut. And then, in late February, people began hearing voices from inside those houses, familiar voices, the voices of the families who had lived there. Not ghosts, Eileen said. She was very firm on that. Not ghosts. Ghosts are echoes. These were attentive. They knew who was listening. They used the right names. They asked the right questions. They invited people in. A man named Josiah Carver, who had lost his wife and son to the cold in December, heard their voices from his own house while he was standing in the road. His wife calling him to supper. His boy laughing. He went inside. His house had been dark and frozen for 2 months. When he opened the door, it was warm, candlelit. The table was set. His wife was standing at the hearth. He sat down to eat. They found him in the morning. He was at the table. The house was dark and cold again. He was frozen solid, had been dead for hours. But his face... Eileen paused here, and for the first time her voice changed. His face was peaceful, content, like he'd had the best meal of his life. After Josiah, 3 more people went in. Same pattern. Voices of loved ones. Warmth and light inside dark houses. Found dead in the morning, frozen, peaceful. The town was losing people not to the cold anymore, but to the warmth. The false warmth. By March, the surviving families understood the pattern. The presences. Eileen called them the occupants, and I could hear the capital O. Emerged at full dark, and only at full dark. During the day and during twilight, even the faintest remnant of sunlight, they were dormant or absent or whatever they were. But the moment true dark arrived in the valley, the lights appeared in the windows and the voices started. The town didn't defeat them. The winter ended. April came, the snow melted, the passes opened, the occupants retreated. But the following winter, when the dark came back, so did they. And the winter after that, and every winter since. 210 years, Eileen said. She refilled my coffee. They come with the dark and they go with the light, and they wait inside the houses and they call to us, every night, every winter. When the days get longer and the dark period shrinks, they have less time and they're less organized. Summer is almost normal, almost. But October through March, when the dark lasts 14, 15 hours, they're very strong. I asked what they are. Nobody knows. The early records call them spirits, devils, angels, depending on who was writing. The Congregational minister in 1823 called them the hungry hospitality. I've always thought that was closest. I asked why the town doesn't leave. She looked at me as if I'd said something in a language she didn't speak. "This is our home," she said. "These are our houses. We built them. We have been here since before Vermont was a state. Where would we go? And then she said, besides, they don't hurt us. Not directly. Not if we follow the agreements. This is the part that changed everything I understood about Hartsfield. The agreements are not the laminated card. The card is a simplified version for outsiders. The real agreements are kept in the town clerk's office in a series of leather-bound ledgers dating back to 1824, and they represent a 2-century-long negotiated coexistence between the families of Hartsfield and the occupants. Eileen explained it like this. The occupants need to be let in. They cannot enter a house on their own. They can produce light, produce voices, produce warmth, produce the appearance and sound and even smell of a dead loved one, but they cannot turn a doorknob. They need someone on the inside to open the door, or someone on the outside to accept their invitation. The rules, the real rules, the ones in the ledgers, are designed to minimize the opportunities for either. The upstairs lights are a signal system. Every household in Hartsfield turns on an upstairs light at dusk. This means we are alive, we are aware, we are secured. If a house goes dark, all lights off, upstairs and down. It means one of two things. Either the house is empty, which is manageable, or the family has been compromised and the occupants are now operating the lights, which is catastrophic. That's why the card tells you not to knock at a dark house, Eileen said. If the house is truly empty, leaving the bags is fine. But if the occupants have gotten inside, knocking is an acknowledgement. You've recognized the house as inhabited. That's close enough to acceptance for them to escalate. I asked what escalate means. They learn your voice, she said. From a single knock, from a single word spoken at their threshold, they can learn you well enough to replicate you. Not perfectly, not right away, but well enough that someone who loves you might open a door. I felt something cold move through my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. Dennis, I said. She nodded. Dennis knocked, early on before he understood. He knocked on a dark house and said, "Delivery for Miller." The next week, the Millers heard Dennis at their door at 9 p.m., asking to come in. They didn't open it, but it shook him badly. I asked why Dennis quit. Eileen looked at her hands. Dennis knocked on a second dark house, a different time months later. He'd been careful, but it was raining. He was in a hurry. He forgot to check the windows. He said, "Hello." Just, "Hello." One word. She paused. A week after that, his wife in Rutland answered her phone at midnight, and it was Dennis's voice on the line, asking her to open the front door. But Dennis was in bed next to her. That was when Dennis quit. He told Carla it was personal. It was. I sat in Eileen's kitchen for a long time after she told me that. The house was warm, the coffee was good. Outside, the November sun was already behind the ridge, and the flat gray light was filling the valley, and I could see from where I sat the upstairs windows of the houses across the street beginning to glow, one by one, like a system booting up. "You can quit," Eileen said. "Nobody will blame you. But Greg, we need the deliveries. We can't leave town after dark to shop for ourselves. We tried online delivery from the big companies and they won't service us. The address keeps getting flagged. The GPS routes break. The drivers get lost. Something about this valley interferes with satellite positioning after dark. Only someone who already knows the route can drive it. Green Mountain Provisions is the only company that ever made it work, because we built the agreement around their schedule. If you quit, we have to find another driver. And the last time that took 7 months. And during those 7 months, 3 households left because they couldn't get food. The town is dying, she said. Not from the occupants. From everything else. The school closed, the store closed, the young people left. The ones who stay are old or stubborn. or bound to property they can't sell because nobody wants to buy a house in a town with our situation. The deliveries are a lifeline, not a metaphorical one, a literal one. She wasn't guilting me. She was just telling me the truth with the same flatness she'd used for everything else. And the truth was that 400 people in a valley in Vermont needed someone to bring them food every Wednesday and leave before dark. And I was the someone, and I needed $1,400 a month. I told her I'd keep driving. She nodded. No thank you, no relief. Just a nod, like she'd known I would, which bothered me more than gratitude would have. Before I left, she gave me a second card, handwritten, not laminated, folded into a small square that she pressed into my palm. The printed card is for normal Wednesdays, she said. This is for when something goes wrong. Here is what the handwritten card says. If you are still in Hartsfield after the time on your card, do not stop moving. Idle speed is acceptable. Walking is acceptable. Standing still is not. Do not respond to any voice you hear, no matter who it sounds like. If a door opens on a house you are passing, do not look at what comes out. It is not coming for you, it is practicing. If your van stalls, get out and walk. Stay on the road. The road is part of the original settlement survey, and the occupants cannot alter it. If you see yourself standing on a porch, do not approach yourself. You are not looking at a reflection. You are looking at a draft. The occupants have been practicing you since your first delivery. They are not finished yet. They cannot use you until they are finished. How long this takes depends on how much of yourself you give them. Every word spoken, every moment of eye contact with a dark window, every second spent standing still on their ground makes the draft more complete. If the draft becomes complete, it will begin delivering in your place. It will follow the route. It will knock on doors. It will say the right names. People will open their doors because they trust the delivery man. That is what the occupants want, not you, your keys. I drove home with both cards on the passenger seat, and I didn't play music, and I didn't call anyone, and I kept my speed at exactly the limit, and I thought about what it means to be a key. I kept driving the route. December, January, February. Every Wednesday, same rhythm. Load the van, drive to Hartsfield, start delivering by 2:30 or 3, work through the list, watch the light die, watch the upstairs windows come on, move fast through the last third of the route, be out by the time on the card. In December, the time was 7:50. In January, 7:44. The darkest month, the shortest leash. I never cut it close again after November. I learned to be fast without rushing. I stopped accepting coffee, stopped letting Tom Breck talk, stopped lingering at Mrs. Aldrich's while she showed me things she'd made for Nora. I was polite, but I was moving. Always moving. The handwritten card said standing still was the danger, and I believed it. But things happened. Small things that accumulated like snow. In mid-December, I delivered to a house on Quarry Hill, and the woman who answered the door, I'd been delivering to her for weeks. Her name was Sandra Haig, mid-50s. Quiet. Looked at me for a long time before taking her bags. Then she said, "You came at 6:45 last week, too." I said yes, I try to keep the same schedule. "No," she said. "You came at 6:45, and then you came again at 7:30. I told her I only come once. She looked at me like she wanted to believe me, and then she took her bags and closed the door, and I heard the deadbolt and then a second lock and then a third. In January, I started noticing the vehicles. Rule 7 on the laminated card said if a vehicle is parked with its headlights on facing you, don't pass it. In November and December, I'd never seen one. In January, I saw 3. 2 on Main Street, 1 on Quarry Hill. Dark-colored trucks. The kind everyone drives up here, Silverados. F-150S, nothing distinctive. Parked on the shoulder with their headlights on, facing east, directly into my path. I waited each time, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then the lights would go off, and when I drove past, the truck was empty, not just unoccupied. Empty. No registration on the dash, no sticker on the bumper, no coffee cup, no phone charger, no scent. Like a vehicle-shaped object with nothing inside it. I told Eileen about the trucks. She said the occupants had been producing vehicles since the 1940s, when car culture reached Hartsfield. Before that it was horses, she said. Before horses it was people walking on the road. They produce what's normal for the era. The trucks are not real. Don't interact with them. I asked her why the trucks face east. She said, they're blocking the exit. They want you to hesitate. Every second you sit there, still, staring at headlights, they're working. I asked what they're working on. Your draft, she said. They're always working on your draft. In February, the thing with the mirrors started. I don't mean my van mirrors. I mean the mirrors in people's houses. 3 separate customers mentioned it to me during daylight deliveries, unprompted, like they'd been waiting for someone to tell. Sandra Haig said she'd covered the mirror in her hallway because at night it showed her living room with someone sitting in the chair. Not her. Not anyone she recognized. Just a shape that was person-colored and person-sized and sitting in her chair. A man on the south end of Maine, Barry Clough, said his bathroom mirror had started showing the hallway behind him with the front door open, even though the door was closed and locked. It's showing me what they want me to see, he said. They want me to see the door open. They want me to think it's already too late. Mrs. Aldrich told me her kitchen window, not a mirror, a window, had started showing the road outside with my van parked in front of her house at night. But you're not here at night, Greg, she said. Are you? I told her no. She nodded slowly. Then it's showing me your draft, she said. It's delivering at night now, is that right? Coming to the houses after 8:17 in your van with your face knocking on doors? I didn't know. I told her I didn't know. But that night, driving home, I thought about it and I felt something I hadn't felt since the first night. That deep, chest-level cold, like a hand reaching through my ribs. Because if the draft was complete enough to deliver, to mimic the route, to knock on doors, then the only thing protecting the people of Hartsfield from opening those doors was their ability to tell the difference between me and the thing wearing my face. And every Wednesday I came back and gave the occupants more material. Every delivery made the draft more accurate. I was the threat, not because of anything I'd done wrong, because I existed, because they were copying me, because trust was the vulnerability, and I was the trusted one. And every week I made the weapon sharper just by showing up. I called Eileen that night. She answered immediately, even though it was 11 p.m. I know, she said before I could speak. I know what you're going to say. I told her I couldn't keep making the draft more real. I told her I was putting the town in danger by coming back. She was quiet for a long time, long enough that I checked my phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Greg, she said, do you know why the occupants can't finish the draft? Why it's been months and they still don't have you, right? I said no. Because you never stay past 8:17. The draft is built from what they observe during their active period. Full dark. But you're only in town during daylight and twilight. They can hear you through the walls. They can see your shape through the windows. But they can't fully observe you because you're always in the light, or the last light, and they can't operate in light. The draft they're building is made from fragments, sounds through doors, shadows through glass. It's incomplete because you do your job and you leave. Dennis was different, she said. Dennis was slow. Dennis liked the town. Dennis stayed late, talked to people in the dark, sat in his van on Main Street eating his sandwich at 8:05. Dennis gave them hours of material, and the draft they built of Dennis was very good. Good enough to fool his wife on the phone. That's why he quit. Not because he was scared. Because he realized the draft was better than him. More patient, more present, more willing to stay. She let that sit. "You're not Dennis," she said. "You're fast and you're scared and you don't like being here. That's what's protecting this town. Not courage, not ritual. Your discomfort. Your desire to leave. They can't replicate something that moves like you do because they've never seen you be still." I didn't say anything. "So keep being uncomfortable," she said. "Keep being fast. Keep wanting to leave. And Greg, don't ever start to like it here. Don't ever feel at home. The second you feel like you belong in Hartsfield is the second the draft has everything it needs." March came. Mud season. The roads were terrible, the vans slid and groaned, and the deliveries took longer because I had to drive slower. The time on the card moved forward. 8:05, 8:10, more minutes of grace as the days lengthened. But the roads ate that margin. I was cutting it closer than I wanted. 7:55 finishes. 8 o'clock finishes. One Wednesday I didn't clear Main Street until 8:08. And in the 9 minutes I had left, driving out on Route 73 in the dark, I saw something in my rearview mirror that I need to describe carefully because I've been turning it over for a month and I still don't fully understand what I saw. There was a van behind me. My van. Not a van like mine. My van. Same white Sprinter with the Green Mountain Provisions logo. Same dent on the rear right panel from when I backed into a post in December. Same mud pattern on the bumper. Following me at exactly my speed, about 100 yards back, headlights on. I accelerated. It accelerated, I slowed down. It slowed down. I watched it in the mirror, and it watched me back. And the driver was visible only as a shape, a silhouette, person-colored and person-sized. And it was driving with one hand on the wheel the same way I drive with one hand on the wheel. I did not stop. I drove to the Willard station. I pulled in. The van behind me kept going. It drove past the station on Route 73, heading east, away from Hartsfield, deeper into the world, and its headlights disappeared around a curve. And I sat there in the parking lot, and I understood finally what Eileen had been telling me. The draft wasn't trying to get into Hartsfield. The occupants didn't need to trick the townspeople into opening their doors. They'd been doing that for 200 years with voices and lights and warmth. That system worked, but it was slow, house by house, one person at a time, and it required full dark, and it was contained by the valley and the ridges and the survey road, and 2 centuries of learned resistance. The draft was for outside. They were building a copy of me so it could drive the route outward, not into Hartsfield, out of it, into Brattleboro, into Keene, into the world where nobody has a laminated card, nobody checks upstairs windows, nobody knows that you don't answer the door after the light dies. The grocery delivery driver, the most trusted stranger in America, the person you open the door for without thinking because they're holding your bags, because you ordered this, because it's normal, because it's just the delivery guy. I called Eileen. It was 8:40 p.m. She didn't answer. I called again. No answer. I called a third time and a voice picked up that sounded like Eileen but wasn't. It was too smooth, too warm, too glad to hear from me. And it said, "Greg, honey, come back to the house. I left something for you." And I hung up and threw my phone on the passenger seat, and I sat there in the fluorescent light of the gas station, and I breathed. It had her voice now, from my calls, from the Saturday I spent in her kitchen. It had my voice from the deliveries and her voice from the phone, and it was building us, assembling us, learning the frequencies of trust. I drove home. I didn't call Carla. I didn't call anyone. I went to my apartment in Brattleboro and I locked the door and I sat on my bed and I looked at the handwritten card and I read the line that now seemed like the most important sentence ever written. The occupants have been practicing you since your first delivery. They are not finished yet. Yet. That was a month ago. It is now April. I drove the route last Wednesday. 3 days ago, and I will drive it again this coming Wednesday, and the Wednesday after that, and the Wednesday after that. The days are getting longer. The dark period is shrinking. The time on the card is 8:17 again and climbing. And by June it'll be past 9:30, and summer in Hartsfield is almost normal, Eileen said. Almost. But I saw the van again last Wednesday. Not behind me this time. Ahead of me. On Route 73 West, driving toward Hartsfield at 1:45 p.m. while I was driving toward Hartsfield at 1:45 p.m. We passed each other. I was going east to west and it was going west to east, and for 1 second, maybe less, I saw the driver, and the driver saw me, and the face was mine. Not close to mine, not approximately mine. Mine, my eyes, my jaw, my stubble, the way I squint when oncoming headlights are too bright. Every detail correct except one, the expression. I looked startled, scared, human. The draft looked calm, patient, content. Like it had been driving this road for years and knew every curve and wasn't in any hurry at all. It was out in daylight. I pulled over and called Eileen. From outside Hartsfield in daylight on my cell, she answered. It was really her. I could tell by the flatness, the economy of words, the total absence of warmth, which was how I knew it was the real Eileen, and not the thing that answers with too much kindness. I saw it, I said. My draft, on the road, in daylight. She was quiet for a long time. That's new, she said. I asked what that means. It means the rules are changing, she said. It's never been outside the valley in daylight before. Not in 210 years of record keeping. They've always needed full dark. She paused. You must be very well made, Greg. I didn't know what to say to that. Keep driving the route, she said. We still need the food. Eileen, I said. It's out there. It's got my van and my face, and it's on the public road in the middle of the afternoon. It could go anywhere. Brattleboro. Keene. It could knock on my ex-wife's door with bags of groceries and she'd let it in. She'd let me in because she knows my face, and it would be holding bags and Nora would be right there. Greg, Eileen's voice was the sharpest I'd ever heard it. Listen to me. The draft is made of observation. It only knows what it's seen. It's seen you drive the route, deliver bags, knock on doors, follow the card. That's all it knows. It doesn't know about Nora. It doesn't know about Keene. It doesn't know about your ex-wife. It knows the route. As long as you keep your personal life out of Hartsfield. Don't mention your family. Don't carry photos. Don't talk about your life to anyone in town. The draft is a delivery driver and nothing else. I thought about this. I thought about Mrs. Aldrich asking about Nora. I thought about telling Tom Breck about the braces. I thought about Eileen herself asking me, on that first Saturday, do you have family? Eileen, I said, you asked me about my family on the first day, in your kitchen. Silence. I told you about Nora, I said. I told you about Keene. I told you about the $1,400. Silence. Eileen, was it you who asked? She hung up. She has not answered the phone since. It has been 3 days. I am driving the route again in 4 days. I have to. The town needs food and I need money, and those are the two most American forces I know. And they've been enough to push me into that valley every Wednesday since November. And they'll be enough this Wednesday too. But I need to know if the thing that sat with me in that warm kitchen in November and poured me coffee and told me the history of Hartsfield and pressed a handwritten card into my palm. I need to know if that was Eileen Calder, or if Eileen Calder's upstairs light was already off when I arrived. And the thing that met me at the door was something that had been practicing an old woman's voice for 210 years and had finally found someone worth using it on. Because the card, the handwritten card, the one that tells me what to do when something goes wrong, I've been reading it again and again, and there's something about it that I didn't notice until this week. The laminated card from Carla is typed in a standard font, printed cleanly, professional. The handwritten card is in neat, careful script, the kind of handwriting a person develops over decades. I compared them for the first time 3 days ago. The handwriting on the card matches the delivery addresses on the route list, every one. 46 addresses, written in the same hand as the emergency protocols. Eileen didn't write the card for me. She wrote the route. She decided which houses I visit, in which order. She decided that 22 Ridgeline Road. The dark house, the oldest house, the one with the wrong proportions, would be last. She decided I would be there at 8:17. She decided I would hear Tom Breck's voice. She decided I would be frightened and come to her and sit in her kitchen and tell her everything about my life while the upstairs light in her house was on and the coffee was warm and the door was closed. And I did. I sat there and I gave a thing my daughter's name and my schedule and my fears and the exact dollar amount that keeps me coming back. And it listened, and it poured more coffee, and it told me a story about a town that needed me, and I believed it because I needed to be needed, and because the coffee was good, and because the house was warm, and because the door was already open. I don't know who Eileen Calder is. I don't know if the history she told me is true, or if it's a better, older version of Tom Breck's voice calling from a dark house. Something designed to sound so true that you walk inside and sit down. I know the town is real. I know the people are real. Tom, Sandra, Mrs. Aldrich, Barry. I've seen them in daylight. I've touched their hands when passing bags. They're real and they're afraid and they need food. I know the draft is real. I've seen it. It has my face and my van, and it's getting better. I know I'm going back on Wednesday. If you live in Vermont or New Hampshire or anywhere in northern New England, and a delivery van from Green Mountain Provisions pulls up to your house and the driver knows your name, and he's holding your bags, and he seems calm and patient and not in any hurry, check the time. If it's after dark, don't open the door. And if he looks like he belongs there, if he looks like he's been coming to your house for years, like he knows every room, like he's comfortable, like he's home, that's how you know it's not me. I am never comfortable. I am never home. I am fast and scared and I want to leave. That's the only difference between me and the thing wearing my face. For now,